Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I believe that all of our councillors and staff are present on the call already. So I'll just introduce them, and then we'll proceed with our meeting. The councillors, all five of us are present tonight. Myself, Mayor George Comrie, Councillor Joe Lamb, Councillor Beth Gorham Matthews, Councillor Joe McEwen, and Councillor Brian Woods, who is, I believe, just on the phone. The rest are here on video as well. We also have from our staff, our CAO clerk, Michelle Hendry, Fire Chief Bob Whitman, our treasurer, Pat Allen, our deputy clerk, Judy Mines, and we have our planner, John Jackson. Have I missed anybody from the staff?
I believe you've captured everyone, Mr. Mayor.
And I note that there are a number of folks from the public, so I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you and thank you for joining us. I'm going to call the meeting back to order. We did earlier from starting at 5 o'clock have a closed session of council. So we have already completed agenda items 1 to 3 on the agenda, if you're looking at that. So I'm calling it the meeting to order at 6:37 p.m. and I will ask our councillors again if anyone has a pecuniary interest to declare. And hearing none, we'll let the record show that there was no conflict of interest declared. We, excuse me, we now need a motion to approve the agenda for this evening as circulated. Can I get a mover and seconder?
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb, seconded by?
I'll second Councillor Woods.
Seconded by Councillor Woods. Any discussion? Any objection to approving the agenda as circulated? Okay, hearing none, I'll declare it approved. There are a couple of matters arising from the closed session that we had previously. Could I get a motion, please, to approve the closed session meeting minutes for our council meetings of June 7th, 2021 and June 21st, 2021?
I will so move, Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Seconded by?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Gorham Matthews. These were already discussed previously. So I'll ask, is there any objection to approving those minutes? Hearing none, they're approved. There is one more item from the closed session to be brought forward into this open session. I need a mover and seconder for the following, please. That the council of the municipality of Whitestone hereby appoints the following to the Environmental Stewardship Committee. And these are all Lake Association members, nominees of lake associations. There are 3 of them. First, Lynn Brennan from the Washkish Conservation Association. Nigel Davies from the Magnetawan Pioneer Association. and Cecilia Parks from the Lorimer Lake Cottage Association. And she is replacing Gary Monahan, who had been previously nominated. So could I get a mover and seconder for that motion, please?
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb, seconded by,
I'll second, Councillor McEwen.
thank you, Councillor McEwen. Any further discussion? Okay, is there any objection to declaring that motion carried? All right, thank you. Hearing none. We have no presentations or delegations this evening. We do have a planning matter to talk about, however, so that will, in order to deal with that, we would like to move into committee of the whole. Could I get a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move, Councillor Woods.
Thank you. Seconded by
Second.
Councillor Gorham
I'll second.
Matthews.
Yeah.
That's so we can hear a presentation from our planner on the item and have some discussion with it, the need for a motion on the floor to begin with. So it is 6:42 p.m. Unless there's an objection, we will move into committee of the whole. All right, thank you. What I think I'll do at this point is turn the meeting over to our planner, John Jackson, who has prepared a report. And I'll get him to present that. Just by way of background for some of you who might not sort of understand what is going on here. We have had we have been approached by the purchaser of a property in the municipality who has an interest in establishing a manufacturing facility on that particular property, and is in the process of submitting the necessary documents to get that property appropriately rezoned as required and so on. But the subject has come up in discussion as to whether or not, because of the nature of the use of this facility, whether or not council should consider designating an area of the municipality as a commercial designation for that particular use. And the whole reason for doing that sort of thing is that what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to have, if you do in fact, we do succeed in attracting a manufacturing facility to our municipality, which of course we think would be a very good thing economically for Whitestone. There would be the risk that it would get sort of in effect boxed in by infilling of residential properties, and then some folks might say, well, those uses are incompatible with manufacturing, and would limit the kinds of things that might need to be done on the lands where the factory is located. So a lot of municipalities do this kind of proactive zoning or planning. We have never done this in Whitestone before. This is the first time we've ever talked about it. Historically, what we've done is people come with specific applications and we consider them on their merits. But this is the this is an opportunity to sort of start the process of thinking about whether we might want to do that kind of thing. So that's all it is. We're not making any specific decisions tonight, of course, because this is a long process, which, or not a long process necessarily, but it involves, public meetings and various other things. So with that as a preamble, I'll ask John Jackson to kind of lead us through what the various issues are and how he's suggesting we might deal with them. John?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, the typical approach in a rural type municipality is probably best described as reactive, only because of the vast areas. We don't tend to have any real understanding of where commercial or industrial interests might pop up. One thing for sure, in a municipality like Whitestone, they've always tried to be as progressive and forward thinking as they can, given their more or less remoteness from any built up community. But the idea was that we would certainly like to support areas which would appear to have a fairly benign impact on mostly sensitive land uses like waterfront or residential areas. But on the other hand, if there was a potential for commercial or industrial use, it would be very helpful if we focused the attention on supporting those endeavors so that they didn't end up with the kind of pushback that might be expected because of the conflict that inevitably ensues with these kinds of uses. So the idea was we have this very exciting opportunity in the municipality for a potential employment opportunity of some significance. So we want to be sure to encourage that opportunity. So the idea was that why don't we, in fact, go forward, be proactive as the mayor suggests, and set out a general region in the municipality that we would prefer to see non-residential or non-sensitive uses occur in order to promote this kind of commercial use. So we were looking at options, and one of the options that we would put forward as staff is a possible rezoning of these lands for a broad base of commercial and industrial use. When we say industrial, we really need to qualify that, because in the absence of any municipal services like water or sewer services, they have to be low water uses. So when I say the word industrial, I actually mean perhaps more on the lighter side of industrial, so that those heavy water demands aren't in fact able to occur in these areas. But the approach that we're suggesting is that we take this broad band of area, pre-zone it as commercial, which is, as I say, proactive, as the mayor's indicated. We would attach an H symbol to it, which is a tool in the Planning Act that allows us to still require, once it's rezoned, to the principle of development to make sure things like services, the environment, and any particular special features are looked at as part of the review process. And the lifting of the H is a fairly inconsequential step in terms of the process. So it's a whole new, as I say, exciting approach to encouraging development of a commercial light industrial nature. And the spark was an interest by an outside agent that we feel is a good fit for the area. So we're, as we say, very much feeling that this is a supportable process that can occur and will, we believe in the potential for opportunities for Whitestone. It's kind of a mini minister's zoning order. I mean, you probably heard in the news where the province could come in and do this in large areas where they feel that there's a provincial employment opportunity, and they'll often come in and actually set aside areas by way of a minister's zoning order for, say, a new car plant or a new significant employment opportunity. We are actually on a micro scale kind of doing what the province does quite often in Ontario to recognize the importance of employment opportunities. So hopefully, Your Worship, that kind of sets the foundation for what we're doing. And if there's any questions, myself and Michelle will do our best to answer them.
Okay, thank you. I will open the matter up for discussion by councillors. Questions, comments? Councillor McEwen, you're muted.
We better get him. He's talking.
Councillor McEwen, can you unmute yourself, please? Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, do you hear me?
Yeah, got you now. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. To Mr. Jackson, you did in essence draw a circle around the prospective property, and it includes some 10 RU lands and such, which is considerable. If we were to look at doing a rezoning of all that property, and we're affecting a lot of people. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be maybe as interesting or maybe even more viable to look at properties that say abut Highway 124 directly, which could be in essence 100 acre tracts of land with very little residential effect on them, versus going in a circle to encompass all these different properties. I'm wondering what your reasoning was for doing it in a circular fashion. I know it's just an option, a first kick at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, yes, you're quite correct, Councillor. It's really just a broad brush. What we would do is we would probably extend that brush mostly focused along the highway, and you would do it more surgically. So you wouldn't zone a dwelling, for example, in that broad brush area as industrial or commercial. You would leave it residential. So it's more of a concept blob, if I can put it in a kind of a very simple way. So what you're speaking of is something that will in fact happen. So we would look at the properties that would be proposed to be zoned in a pre-zoning context. And again, those will also be subject to the scrutiny of the owners. A lot of owners would say, whoa, you know, I'm not necessarily sure I want to support this, but we'll do it as I describe it with a certain amount of discretion in terms of what works and what the ratepayers and owners would like to see.
Okay, and I guess in essence, we have a number of properties that look to be pretty vacant. Is this something we can entertain ourselves in a fairly expedient fashion without having, say, a professional modeling of it? Without having someone come in and do an overall assessment of not just this location, but the municipality, to see if it's maybe the best location for the best fits?
You certainly could. This particular property, I think, has some assets in terms of the fact that it's isolated away from any hot spots, if you like, where there has obviously been some interest shown. So you could do it on a broader sense. Again, you go back to what we have to deal with as rural planners, and that is, where do things pop up? So it's a balancing act in terms of where's the interest likely to show up, and trying to, I'll call it second guess. Here, there's a little less second guessing because we know of a couple of interests, particularly one that has indicated that it wants to proceed with a opportunity in this area. So there's a lot of moving parts. This one here is starting to congeal into something more substantive.
Yeah, I would just be concerned that we have too many moving parts, I guess, and I'd really very much like us to be able to address this individual with a bylaw zoning change fairly expediently, if that's what's necessary. We could get into quite a different picture if we're not careful, I'd say.
Through your worship, I could just follow up with Councillor McEwen. We believe that there is an application coming very, very quickly, to the extent that you would probably see it before end of summer and be circulated before that necessary public meeting. So we'll know a lot more about the details of the specific here through the next coming months.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councillor Hans.
Yeah, following up on what Councillor McEwen is saying, I share some of the concerns. I'll probably be a little more direct than he is. That's my nature. We have a wonderful opportunity that will be facing us if the application that's coming forward that purchased this land goes forward. And I sincerely hope that it does. You know, we've worked hard. I've been on council 14 years. The commercial and the industrial tax rate are the same, which is very unusual in municipalities. And I think we have a very low tax rate. And I think all these things are what help drive this sort of application to our community. So I want to of course welcome this application wholeheartedly and support it wholeheartedly. And so what we're faced with is one application coming forward, and we need to expedite this in a friendly manner as soon as possible so that we're moving forward. And to now start, you know, and that's going to affect some people around this particular property. I don't think there's any residential right around it, so around the place. But I really feel like now we're going to put the cart before the horse. And rather than expedite that, we're going to get into drawing great big circles and saying, okay, well, because this application's here, we're going to make this whole zone, whatever it is, and all these other properties, commercial and industrial, and we're going to be ahead of the curve and whatever. And that's reactive, Mr. Jackson. You said we're reactive. What we're doing and what we're discussing, in my opinion, is reactive, exactly what you're saying. We don't know that this is the best place. If we were going to develop a zone for commercial industrial, we don't know that this is the best place. It just happens to be the place that this individual application is coming from. And what we're going to do is, I mean, if we look very carefully at what we did on Highway 124 with one rezoning of a shop, a repair shop, we had all kinds of pushback in the community. It was unreal. Okay. Now we're going to take a great big circle and say, okay, all your properties could be commercial and industrial, and we're ahead of the curve and whatever. And what we're going to get ourselves into is a great big bind. So I'm not supportive of this at this time. I'm supportive of fast tracking the application that we have in a very friendly way, because it's a great thing for our community, and doing whatever we can to support this, and put the argument or this whole argument after that is completed, and after we get assessed whether this is the best place or any other place is the best place, and what the community reaction to taking a whole zone and saying, well, right now you're residential, but we're maybe going to make you, commercial, industrial. And by the way, right next door to you, you might have a machine shop now. I mean, rightfully so, people will go bananas. And why are we triggering that now? I have no idea why we're triggering that tonight. To me, it's a bad decision to have put this on the agenda, and it's a bad decision to be discussing it right now. So I will not be supportive of putting a big circle around Lorimer Lake Road tonight, or even in the next meeting, until we've studied it a lot more. We could get a very adverse reaction to a very, very positive thing in our community. And I think that's what Councillor McEwen is afraid of, as I am. And I don't want to go there. And I think it's a bad thing to do. So thank you. And I'll listen to others. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think I want to respond to why we're doing this now, so that everybody understands. The concern that Councillor Lamb has raised is about folks who have who see an industrial development in a residential area. And he's right. We had some experience with this on the outskirts of Dunchurch earlier this year, or early a couple of years ago. And that's a natural reaction when folks have residences in a particular area. They are disinclined to see industrial activity on properties that are adjacent to them. This is precisely the concern that the owners of the property in question that have plans to do a development and are going to submit an application. This is exactly the concern that they have. And the concern isn't that it's going to be a problem today, because it's quite a large piece of property. I don't know if you can see this on the map that you have in front of me. It's not the one with the circle in it, by the way. I'll come back to that in a minute. But it's a significant block of land which is zoned. It's the area surrounding it is all zoned rural, except that property had a pit in it, so it's zoned for extraction, as does one of the adjacent properties. But what the new owners of that property are concerned about is that if they put up a modest manufacturing facility on that property, and then down the road operated, and it's not likely going to inconvenience anybody, because there are in fact no residences close to it. That's why that property seems attractive for this purpose. But if we continue to operate in the mode where we accept applications from anybody to rezone various other properties around it, and folks start building residences on it, then when the time comes to expand that facility, which we hope would be the case in the future, then we would get pushback from folks who have essentially infilled the area around the property with residential development, and say, well, gee, we don't really want this across the road from us. And that's the concern that they have. And that is why municipalities larger than ours, and ones that have gone through this before, typically do what we are talking about, which is to identify an area that is suitable for a particular use, and to try to encourage that type of development and discourage other types of development. So That's why we're dealing with it. That's why it's in front of you right now. The second thing that you should know, I think the diagram with the circle on it is perhaps a little bit misleading. There are actually within the bounds of that circle some existing residences. The circle should be moved further north. It should be smaller probably, and further north along the highway. I realize Mr. Jackson said it was just drawn to illustrate a concept, but all of the lands that are proposed to be designated are lands that are currently rural and not occupied. There are, as I said, a couple of gravel pits on them. There isn't any residential. There's no residential housing that currently would be affected by industrial facilities in this area, and so it's not as big an area as might be suggested by that circle that is being suggested here, but it's land, the use for which is currently up for grabs, and the intent would be to signal to folks that yes, it's appropriate for industrial and commercial development and not appropriate for residential development, because we are hoping to locate a manufacturing facility on that property. So the exact timing of it, again, I agree with the suggestions that have already been made, that we certainly hope to see the specific rezoning application for the one property in question come before us, but on the assumption that council would be receptive to that and would want to encourage that kind of development, then we would in effect have set a precedent for those lands, and by extension, we would have set a precedent for the preferred use of lands that are immediately adjacent to them, which, as I said before, are either currently commercial, are currently being used for forestry operations, for example. There's one up the road, but there aren't any incompatible uses today, and the idea is to keep it that way so that we don't so that we avoid the kind of conflict that Councillor Lamb is talking about in future. So I'll turn it over to other councillors to comment. Councillor Gorham Matthews.
Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Gorham Matthews first, if you don't mind. She's had her hand up first, and then we'll get Councillor Woods.
Yeah, I kind of am along the same thought as Councillor McEwen. I think it's more the shape that I think is throwing people off. Most people, when they saw this in the package, they didn't have any background to associate why we're looking at this. I think we should focus more on what's developable, sticking with it along the 124 corridor. That's more business friendly and has access to transportation and such. Some of this circle cuts very close to people's waterfront properties and such, and we don't want to encourage industrial activity, I think, near lakes and rivers and things like that. So, I think just throwing that circle down, I get the idea of what we're looking at, and I think it's very proactive, but I think the shape is what it encompasses a lot of area, and I think that we don't mean it to, and I think we need to relook at that before we go any further. That would be my comment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woods?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. When I read this, I mean, I think everybody's stated it pretty well. When I looked at the circle, I thought, wow, that's a big area, and I think the average person would think that. I do understand what the reason is behind it, Mr. Mayor. I know I said this, it'd be a few years back now when all the rezoning was happening here in the municipality. I said, you know, the way that we have things laid out, anybody can open anything anywhere and ask for a rezoning, and we got to be careful because you can create small brownfields, you know, all throughout the municipality. So I do understand what the reason for designating an area for a business park. Do I think we're there yet? I'm not sure. I don't think we're there yet. It's definitely a good thing to start thinking about. Would I support this person's proposal for having a business there? Absolutely, I would. I think that anybody and everybody in the municipality, if you sat down and thought about how much of a positive impact this could have on this municipality, you shouldn't be disagreeing with it. As far as a rezone, we should judge them all based on the merits of the application when it comes to the table. I don't think for any reason we should try and give this person any amount of pushback, but I definitely understand why people would be concerned when they look at the diagrams that are in the package tonight. I would love to see the community rally around something like this and definitely help this person through this process and try and get them up and running, because it's, I mean, realistically, think about it. I had someone say it to me about the application that was previously mentioned on 124. I mean, that's the very first new business that was a build and brought into this municipality in decades. And anything we can do to promote people to come here and start businesses, we should all be doing. And I think that's what everybody's end goal is. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, are there any other comments?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I have one real quick one.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Woods.
I received an email before this meeting started. And the last line, I'll just read it to everybody. It's real quick, from a ratepayer here in the municipality. It said, could you please propose contacting those affected in tonight's meeting? It would be greatly appreciated. I don't know, are we going to be sending out notices to any of these property owners in the area, like in mail notices, or is this just something that would be on the webpage?
Well, there's, I was actually going to ask if either our clerk or Mr. Jackson wanted to comment on sort of what the process is involved. So in doing any of this, just to remind everybody what happens when we have what is in effect a rezoning. It's not going to happen as a result of what we do tonight. I mean, it's not going to happen just because we've had this discussion, but I don't know who would like to.
I'll give that.
John, do you want to respond, John?
Yes, I would be happy to, Your Worship. I think in this kind of a proactive, I'll call it proactive, rather than reactive, although I appreciate Councillor Lamb's comments. I think that you normally only need to have a notice saying you're about to change a property zoning, but in this kind of context, I think you would want to enter into a more preliminary discussion to get a feel for the general attitude of property owners that would see this coming at them sort of out of the blue. And so, while there's normally one step to advertise towards a public meeting, I think the strategy here would be more helpful to council if it was done on a more preliminary, unofficial basis, so that once you establish the properties that you might want to entertain in this area of possible business use, you would send them a more informal kind of indication of that consideration. And then a second step, should that occur, is that you would go to the formal statutory public meeting that's required for any zoning change. So I would see a strategy that would be more proper, broken down into at least 2 stages.
Okay, thank you. If you have the council package in front of you, the agenda package, you can see after Mr. Jackson's report, there are a couple of attachments. There's an attachment B, for example, which shows you the properties that are that exist right now, that are in the immediate vicinity of the subject property, which is lot, it's a lot. Well, I don't have the actual parcel number here, but if you look at attachment B, you'll see right in the middle of it there is it's kind of it looks almost like a parallelogram. It's immediately north of northeast of the Lorimer Lake Road, and it has a big M2 in the middle of it. That's the property in question. And so you can see around it where the properties are, and you can actually see where existing residences are. And if you go far enough afield of that. So, and I think, I think it's important to understand that the diagram, the earlier diagram that you saw, that was referred to with the big sort of dotted circle in the middle of it, is a much larger area than I think the area that we would be talking about for this. So I don't know. It seems to me that what we perhaps need to do is to, when we come back into open session, is to have some sort of a resolution to support defining an area like this in principle, and to have staff do some additional work to come up with the boundaries that would be involved, and then we could at the same time discuss what the next steps are. But the point that I was hoping that you would get out of what Mr. Jackson said was that this ends up one way or the other being a very public process, that if we were to undertake a rezoning an area like this, or designating an area for a particular use, then obviously everybody would need to know that it's going on and have an opportunity to come and speak their minds. So it's not something that's going to just going to get done in the background, and all of a sudden somebody discovers that the property next to them is industrial. So anyway, if there are no further questions or comments, perhaps we can go back into
Mr. Mayor, could I have one further comment, Councillor McEwen?
You may.
If this gentleman hadn't come along and bought this property, we wouldn't be drawing circles or looking at an industrial park right there presently. So I'd feel good about just addressing his request for rezoning, and certainly moving forward, I like the idea of having potential areas available for commercial if and when someone comes along, so they don't have to go through the whole process and we could lose them, and there's all kinds of factors there. This one in itself, just with the neighboring adjoining properties, is going to be a contest for us, I'm sure. Hopefully we don't get into anything that's sightly and too close to people and all this kind of thing like we had in the field just down from the village here over last year's. But I would feel better if we just proceed with this, gentlemen. And as far as the industrial complex or park, industrial park scenario, move forward with planning toward that idea as a concept. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking at our participants list, and I believe that the owner of the property in question is on the call tonight, and maybe other representatives of his organization. And I guess I might take this might be an opportunity, if not to put him on the spot, but if you Wes, if you wish to say anything about this particular, about what your concern is, I'll give you the opportunity.
Hello, this is Wes. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure if this is relating to me or to our company, because I lost the connection right directly after Councillor Lamb, I believe, spoke with fire speech. So I lost that part of it, and I'm not sure if it's applying to our application or any other applications.
No, we're simply talking about the whole concept of whether or not we would, it's advantageous for us to designate an area for the kind of the kind of land use that you are going to propose to us. Okay. And maybe to help people understand what your concern was about
okay, now I understand. I was a little bit lost because I didn't know whether you are also you are talking about the one application, or we have I'm not sure if a poll is online, but as far as I'm concerned, it was the last week when we actually applied for the first stage of that. So to introduce our idea further, because listening to some councillors, I've realized that they might have been not really well informed about the nature of this property. That property is sort of in a company investment long term, and understanding. And I'm a resident of McKellar, and for last years being living in McKellar, and we purchased that. Our company purchased that for strategic relocation from overseas. And then so we have industrial company with significant importance in the international market for specific products. And then by purchasing a sand pit, backing up, or not backing up, basically adjacent to 124 with decent access, and then on the other side of the highway, there's virtually swamp. I understood there would be little to no conflict. So sites are, I believe, some lumber yard. The other side is Lorimer Lake Road. The problem occurred when so-called prospectors started to pop up north of our location with potential ideas of building their complexes of cottages. Now, I've been involved myself for over 30 years in various companies or various plans of our companies in different countries. And so my experience may be a little bit different than yours. Obviously, we have to exchange the idea, but this sounds very much like potential for arguments, potential for trouble. So our company is pretty much above the board and trying to avoid any potential conflicts. So we're not trying to set up a foundry or nuclear plant of any kind. This is basically advanced manufacturing division, which is automation, processes, textiles. So it's a reasonably light industry. Machining, in fact, we have placed already application for 50 by 100 staging ground, which is our relocation ground. And for our company, catering to very large industrial corporation worldwide, we cannot afford to stop production. We have to have a continuous production. Therefore, we have to move certain equipment to this country, have a staging ground, and so on. Now, listening to this council, and again, I don't have experience, but it seems very involved. And I don't know with the excess of tasks involved by shifting equipment and customs and duties and all that stuff, and then dealing with officials of federal and local MT, all those things, how we're all gonna have it. But are we seeking your help one way or the other? We have good intentions. We have clearly defined the plan of employment. In fact, we are already talking beyond that, how we're gonna train people and on and on. But all of a sudden we're stumbling here with the municipality has to kind of make decision, you know, which way are we going? Is this going to be a municipality primarily of cottagers or cottages, or there will be some process of industries? Please do ask questions if you could.
Okay, well, thank you, Wes. I don't know if there's anything that councillors want to ask you, but I wanted to give you an opportunity since I saw that you were on the call. So, is there anything further? If not,
What I could add, Mr. Mayor, I could add only one thing is that I just want to see any industrial or any international company, and this is the issue of the horse ahead of wagon that was mentioned by one of the councillors. Like we have to sort of have some sort of a trust. If we are already here buying multi-million-dollar property, and if we are already applying things, so there's a clear goodwill to proceed. Now, we're not going to proceed with putting millions and all of a sudden find one Toronto lawyer is buying next to us cottage and putting us out of business. I've been there in many countries. We can't do that. You have to give us some sort of security, please do.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything further from councillors? All right. That's the planning item that we had on the agenda. Can I get a mover and seconder to move back into regular council?
I'll move. Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods, seconded by
I'll second.
Councillor Gorham Matthews. That the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone reconvene into regular council at, looks like 7:29 p.m. All those in, well, any opposed, I'll ask. Hearing none. Now, I guess the next item or the next resolution that I had on the order paper was a resolution to cause some further work to be done on this. I'm wondering if I've heard councillors suggesting that we certainly have more work to do in terms of defining the areas that are in question. and not simply refer to this, to the circle that says Fairholme Business Park in the middle of it, but would someone like to make a motion that we, to the effect that that we approve in principle proceeding with the establishment of a, I'll call it an industrial preferred zone, and that would allow the staff and our planner to continue to do some work in identifying exactly what the boundaries of it might be, so that we could bring it back to another council meeting. Is there an interest in doing that? Or do you want to simply leave the matter until until a future meeting when we have the rezoning application from the applicant for consideration of council?
Mr. Mayor? Hello?
Go ahead, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Wes, thank you for speaking. And I know that you've got the support of the council here. If I understood Wes properly, I think he's concerned about those properties surrounding the M2 property, his property that has been purchased, right? And that just north of him, I think he mentioned a property that was sold just recently. So, and again, I just throw this out there. How, if something was zoned commercial and industrial around this property, and I don't know how many, there aren't very many properties around it, but if that happened, does that prevents them, Mr. Jackson, from putting up a so-called cottage? Or can they put up a cottage anyway? If they're commercial industrial, I can certainly understand his concerns directly around his property that he's purchased, right? And so I guess what I'm thinking is thinking out loud, is there something that can simply be done for the surrounding properties, around this potential facility? Do we have to? I think it gets really difficult when we start drawing, big circles, and when they're the wrong circles, and we're trying to work through them at a council meeting, right? Like we can only go on what we were presented, which was a great big swath in a big round circle, right? So what about if we just concentrated on the properties around his property? Is that possible or legitimate or what?
I think it's quite legitimate. I think that what we were trying to do is deal with that element to some extent in this sort of strategic area. And I say that you have to tread carefully because people have different aspirations with respect to their properties. But if we want to promote a commercial / industrial rezoning in a location, clearly the applicant saying we're concerned that we might get some pushback if there was this I'm going to call it a flourish of non-commercial development, so that sensitive development, they call it, which is residential, might end up being their nemesis, which is an unfortunate thing. So yeah, we'd look at those things when the application came in specifically. As I say, that tends to be the more common approach when we don't know where these things pop up. But fortuitously, this parcel is sitting in an isolated area with a large mass, so it has a bit of inertia on its own. So I think all of these points are certainly of merit, and we just have to look at it as a sort of a continuous review of what's being proposed.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask again, does a councillor wish to move a motion that gives some staff direction to proceed with anything. I suppose we can do it without, I mean, in the sense that we can provide a
Staff direct.
we can, I was gonna say, we could ask, staff could certainly come, and our planner could come back to us with a different diagram than the one with the circle on it that would identify the properties that I think are really affected. Some of which are outside the circle, and the circle's not quite not, I'd have to say is not quite in the right place, but at least not where I would have put it based on what I know about it. But we could perhaps bring it back and into another meeting with a somewhat clearer definition of what would be really really affected if we were to do this.
But Mr. Mayor, and not to hog the microphone here, but if the application comes forward, aren't all the properties that are touching the M2 property, they'll be notified of the intent to rezone, right? Because won't they all be notified of this?
Well, they'll
Just
be
the ones
notified.
that are touched.
They will be notified of the intent to rezone the property that is the subject of this whole discussion, but they would not necessarily get any indication that it would affect what they might do with their property.
So would a motion that you're looking for be one that say directs the planner and or the CAO to perhaps contact the individuals who own property directly around this property to see what their feelings are about being also zoned commercial or industrial? Is that, or am I thinking wrong?
No, that would of necessity happen eventually. The question is, which ones would you? It isn't just necessarily the ones that are immediately adjacent to it. If you go a little further up the road, for example, you'll see that there's up towards the Pines. You will see that there's, there are properties there that are there are no residences on them, but it wouldn't necessarily just be the one property that's immediately adjacent. There could be some others, right? So it's a question of figuring out what are the ones that you would want to include in a zone, and then I suggest you would contact. I mean, obviously, we would have to contact the owners of all those properties, and in addition to that, the people who are adjacent, any other adjacent landowners who are outside of the sort of area that was proposed for designation.
Mr. Mayor, I can see where there are 4 permanent residents abutting this property. One is the large lot 40 Con A to the northeast there. That's Butch Craig. It says Craig right on it. And then down on the bottom, where there's a big RU and there's some smaller lots, there are 3, maybe 4 permanent residences along that Triangle Road. So I have to wonder if we don't just proceed without trying to get into changing people's properties to commercial zone abutting this property, if we don't just deal with this one and try to expedite it the best and easiest, quickest way we can. And maybe John or Mr. Jackson can give us advice on that. And then thinking of future industrial park or, commercial zoning, I think we have to look at that as a whole separate issue and down the road. I think we're just complicating the matter by trying to make commercial on the boundaries of this property.
I agree with Councillor McEwen, and that's what I was trying to say half hour ago.
All right, fine. Thank you. We'll move on. There is no public meeting on the agenda. We have a consent agenda, which consists of the regular council meeting minutes for June 21st to be adopted. Receipt of library board meeting minutes for May 17th and unfinished business, which is on page 4 of your agenda. But I get a mover and seconder, please, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receive and or approve the items contained in the consent agenda dated July 5th, 2021.
I will move, Councillor McEwen.
Thank you. Seconded
I'll
by
second. Councillor Woods.
Mr. Woods. Any discussion related to any of these? You're okay with the council minutes? If I hear no objection, I will declare them approved and or received. Okay, thank you. So there are no matters arising on the consent agenda. Accounts payable. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone approve accounts payable in the amount of $374,576.74 and payroll in the amount of $46,752.72 for payment. Anybody like to move that?
I'll move it.
I'll move, Mr. Mayor.
I'll second it.
Okay, I heard
Make that
Councillor.
motion.
Oh, I've got lots of movers. Councillor Woods moved and Councillor McEwen seconded, I believe. We're there first. So, discussion of any of these items? Are there any questions or comments about any payables? Well, okay, I'm just advancing through to the agenda to it, but hearing none, I will ask our CEO clerk to call the roll for the vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gorham Matthews,
Yes.
Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mayor Comrie.
Yes,
Thank you. That motion is carried.
thank you. All right, that brings us to bylaws. And the bylaw that we have, I am just advancing my package here. The bylaw that we have is a bylaw to close and stop up part of the original short allowance on Washkish Lake in front of certain properties. This item came to us well, some time ago. I think some of you will recall the history of it. And this is the last step. So, but what I'll do is I'll read the motion to you that I'm looking for, and then we can proceed. Whereas it is deemed expedient in the interest of the corporation of the municipality of Whitestone, hereinafter called the corporation, that the original unopened shore road allowance described in Schedule A hereto be closed, and thereafter Part 1, Plan 42R-21487 be sold and conveyed to the adjacent owners. And whereas adjacent owners have made a request to the corporation for the purchase of part of the said original unopened shore road allowance designated as Part 1 on Plan 42R-21487. And whereas public notice of the intention of the corporation to close the said portion of the said shore road allowance has been made in accordance with the municipality's bylaws regarding the same. And whereas no persons have objected in writing to the closing or appeared before the council claiming that his, her, or its lands will be prejudicially affected by this bylaw. And whereas no person uses the road allowance for motor vehicle access to or from the person's land, it's actually an island. And whereas the road allowance does not abut land owned by the Crown in right of Canada or lead to or abut on the bridge, wharf, dock, quay, or other work owned by the Crown in right of Canada. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of Municipality of Whitestone enacts as follows. That upon and after the passing of this bylaw, that part of the original unopened shore road allowance described in Schedule A hereto be, and the same is hereby, closed and stopped up. 2, that upon and after passing of this bylaw, that part of the road allowance described as Part 1, Plan 42R-21487 be sold and conveyed by the corporation to the adjacent owner or owners forthwith after this bylaw comes into effect for other lawful consideration and the sum of $1. That the road allowance described in Schedule A hereto is declared surplus. It's number 3. And number 4, that the mayor and chief administrative officers / clerk be, and they are hereby authorized and directed to sign all such conveyances as may be necessary and expedient for carrying out the provisions of this bylaw, and to affix to such conveyances the corporate seal of the municipality. Can I get a mover and seconder for this motion, please?
I'll move it,
I'll
Councillor.
I'll
Lamb.
move, Councillor McEwen.
So I think Councillor Gore Matthews was first and Councillor McEwen seconded. Did I get that right?
Okay, by me.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, I will, hearing none, I will ask our clerk to call the roll for the vote, please. Madam Clerk, you muted.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was talking. Councillor Gore Matthews.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb,
Yes.
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
Okay, thank you very much. Right. And that brings us to some staff reports. Staff report 13.1 is a budgetary control report for the 6 months ending June 30th, 2021. I'll put the motion and then I'll ask our treasurer, Pat Allen, if she wants to speak to it and maybe take some questions, if there are any. Can I get a mover and seconder that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receive report FIN 2021-07 for information, and that staff continue to keep council updated with quarterly budgetary control reporting?
I'll make the motion, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by
I'll second Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Any comments that you wish to make, Madam Treasurer?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, no, everything's on target. We still have some funding to be received from the government levies. We also have payments to be made as well. Our capital spending is under, I don't know if Dave's on the line for some of the projects to do a bit of an update, or if Michelle could do that. But we're pretty much on target. There's no irregularities, nothing to be concerned about.
Okay. Are there questions? Thank you. Are there questions for our treasurer about this report? Sounds like not. So is there any objection to receiving it? All right, if not, I will declare the motion carried. And continuing with our treasurer's reports, we have another one on tax arrears and tax registration update. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receive report FIN 2021-08, tax arrears and tax registration update. And again, it's for information purposes. Mover and seconder?
I'll move, Councillor McEwen.
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen, and I heard Councillor Gorham Matthews, so we'll put you as the seconder if that's all right. Once again, Pat, Madam Treasurer, would you like to comment?
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor. There's been two properties. It's been a long time coming, but with a little perseverance. We had a CRA lien to deal with and COVID restrictions as well, but we've been able to push through and collect quite a lot of taxes outstanding. I've been able to negotiate a couple of payments as well with just through the tax arrears notices. And even when you go through the tax registration process, that original title search through the lawyers and the letters does prompt some calls that come in. If I can negotiate a repayment plan, I will. All confidential with the ratepayer. Most people are very decent. If they're in arrears, they admit to it, and we work out a repayment plan. We have been close to a couple of tax sales, but there was a registered interested party that came forward at the last minute to pay off two of the tax sales. One we were about to advertise, but the ratepayer did contact me, so we've delayed the advertisement, and we're working out a repayment plan right now. So I think we've been pretty good, pretty diligent about following up on some of the outstanding issues, and I've been able to bring the outstanding arrears down quite a bit.
Thank you, Pat. And when she says a little bit of perseverance, I can tell you that's an understatement. There was a lot of perseverance involved in a couple of the large ones that were outstanding for a long time. But the good news is that we did recoup those funds. So again, questions for our treasurer?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, pleise. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, Pat, thank you. You've done a good job on the previous report and this one. I don't know how public this. I don't want to know about payment plans and stuff like that, but I have a great deal of interest in the CRA lien one. Is that a public? Like, I don't want you to necessarily divulge the name if you can't, but is it the property that probably all of us are thinking about, Mr. Mayor? Or am I
Yeah.
got it wrong?
Yeah, it is the
I'll say yes.
it is the
You'll say
property
yes,
that you're
okay,
that you're
okay.
thinking about, and the CRA did have a lien on it. And
Okay, I know.
they relinquished.
I
They
know.
they
Good.
they wrote it off, I guess is the correct term. Pat can maybe tell you, but they stepped aside, which allowed us then to pursue our particular claim, but which was being held up because of the fact that the Canada Revenue Agency was sort of ahead of us in the line.
Well, there you go. On top of all your other credentials, Mr. Mayor, you're now officially a mind reader. Thank you.
Okay, are there other questions for our treasurer? Well, hearing none, I will then ask if there are any objections to us receiving this report for information. And hearing none, I will declare the motion carried. The next item is an update on the proposed building expansion for our nurse practitioner-led clinic. Again, I'll get the motion on the table, and then our CAO is going to lead us through the material that's in front of us. Can I get a mover and seconder that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone receive report admin-2021-10 nurse practitioner-led clinic project update for information, and that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone confirms support of the expansion of the Whitestone and area nurse practitioner-led clinic, including a commitment as required by the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund Corporation application process to cover any project cost overruns as deemed necessary, and that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone approves a single source contract with FAD Architects of Parry Sound for the final design work, tender and construction drawings preparation and contract administration for the Whitestone and area nurse practitioner-led clinic. Moved by
I'll move, Councillor McEwen.
thank you, Councillor McEwen, seconded by
I'll second.
thank you, Councillor Gorman Matthews. Thank you for that, and I will turn it over to our CEO clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the title suggests, this is an update on the nurse practitioner-led clinic project. There's a number of moving parts. More particularly is the NOHFC application. We're in stage 2, so we've been approved at the stage 1 process, and we've been moved to the Sudbury office for a more intense review of the project. And as you can note by one of the items in the resolution, they need a resolution from the municipality confirming that the municipality is in support of the project, as well as we have a letter of support from the hospital and from Magnatowan and from McKellar, but we didn't have one from Whitestone. And they also want to be comfortable that if there are overruns on the project, that the municipality has the ability and the willingness to manage any additional project cost overruns. So that had to be specific in the resolution. The other piece is awarding the single source contract to FAD Architects. We worked with these folks. Did a very good job for us. They've done all the design work so far, so they're very familiar with the project, and it's not likely we would find another architect that could dig in and do it for less than these folks. And we found that when we did an RFP for the library contract. The other piece is talking a little bit about the costs. As you can see, that there's been an update on the costs based on what our architect and local contractor she works with knows right now about the cost of building. I talk about the 3 grant applications that are that are underway. And I talked a little bit about the fundraising. The advisory committee has really stepped up, and they're working on a number of ideas, and we're going to release a campaign in the next few weeks to, they're going to do everything from garage sales to letter writing, the kind of things that the library did, and that they got a little bit of guidance from the library folks on this. And the exciting piece about the fundraising is there's been an anonymous donor who is willing to match up to $80,000 in donations. So if they fundraise $80,000, then this anonymous donor will match that $80,000 to create $160,000 donation pot, and they believe that they can fundraise a total of $180,000. So that's one more thing is that there's been some discussion about alternate services and adding to the library, adding to the footprint, perhaps having a pharmacy, and I went to the Westbury Sound Health Center. Actually, Mayor Comrie and I talked to the Westbury Sound Health Center folks because they seem to have some general knowledge about whether a pharmacy would work in this location and whether it would be a viable business alternative. And as you can see from the notes in the report, with only having one healthcare provider writing prescriptions, their feeling from their experience is that it's not necessarily a viable option at this time. But possibly in the future, they don't know what kind of services they're going to provide in the future, whether they'll have additional nurse practitioners. Typically, you need 3 healthcare providers writing prescriptions to make it a viable business. So the last thing I think council would want is a pharmacy to possibly come in there and not be a viable business, and then we'd have empty space. So the thought process is that we've designed for the extra space for the future in a way that it could be easily added on to, but have not included the additional 800 square feet in the current design process. So that is my report, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to answer any questions if council has any.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. I will open the floor up to for questions from councillors.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah. Is there anyone from the hospital on the call?
Well, we do have on the call Marcella Scholdes, who is she is the chair of the local nurse practitioner-led clinic advisory committee.
Okay.
So if I'm sure she's done a lot of work on as Michelle mentioned, she's done a lot of work relative to the communications plan and fundraising and various other things. So she might be able to. I don't know if you're looking to ask a specific question, she might be able to answer that.
Yeah, I just have a few comments and then a question or two. This is a major project, obviously, that in our community, which I fully support, and I think the community does. So, and secondly, I think this report for all the people that had to do with it, the CAO and the hospital for all the backup information, that's all well done. And I think anyone in the public would be well versed to read all this material, because there's a lot of good stuff in here. I want to remind Marcella to take back the message that the only thing I ever asked for all this investment was that perhaps the hospital look at expanding hours in the summertime for when our population explodes, on the weekends. And I see in the plan there's a suite, if you will, for a replacement for vacation and that sort of thing. So there's housing perhaps on the weekends for someone. But again, I and I think the community would like to see additional hours at the facility. And the other thing is, as just a comment, we're building all these extra rooms, and it sort of infers that we're severely limited. I would want to make sure that it can be filled up. For in other words, if there's physiotherapy being done now, that there's the staffing to get more physiotherapy work done at the clinic. For in other words, if the physiotherapist is busy at every other clinic, Portobello or wherever else, that they're able to fill that space up. I assume that they're going to be able to do that. If they're not, then Marcella, speak now or forever hold your peace. So, but I think that's done. In terms of a pharmacy, I agree with that I don't think there's any support for a pharmacy. I think it'd go out of business pretty quick. But in terms of all the other things, and again, I thank our CAO and you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the expansion beyond this expansion, which would be for perhaps people that are things like, massage therapy or chiropractic or foot care or any of these other things. I'll leave that up to the next council after this expansion is done to see whether they want to kind of go down that route. I would suggest, however, that we should take that parallel route that you're talking about in your report, so that we're not waiting, 2 years and then starting to gauge any interest towards that. That doesn't mean we're going to build an extension, right now, but we should maybe next year start to gauge interest as to whether, if we were to build anything else, whether we could fill it with other medical services that I think would be greatly appreciated in the community. So I have a question of the clerk. I'm not surprised, of course, of the building, costs going up from whatever it was, 600 and some odd thousand to 866. That's, of course, what we said would happen with anything, including the office, if we had built. But anyway, in the fundraising, Michelle, the foundation, I know they said at one point that they had monies that they would be donating, and I'm just wondering whether that amount from the foundation is in the fundraising amount, or has it been missed?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, and I'll ask Marcella to jump in if I get the story wrong. You are correct. There are some foundation monies that are specifically earmarked for the nursing station. As it turns out, these monies cannot be utilized to build the building. The building isn't owned by the West Prairie Sound Health Center. It's owned by Whitestone. Where that money will be utilized is for all of the furnishings and all the equipment that's needed when the building expands. So it hasn't been missed, but it's not part of the building fund for the expansion of the nursing station. I think that there was a few people that were surprised, perhaps even the CEO at the hospital, that there was some restrictions on how that money can be used. However, they have committed to utilizing that money that, as I said, is specifically earmarked for the Whitestone nursing station to outfit the new building with all of the equipment and furnishings that's needed once it expands.
Okay, and thank you. I'll just be a couple more minutes. I had, but that was my next question. There's nothing in here for furnishings, but I think you've explained that.
Yeah.
There also is nothing in here for contingency. Why is there no contingency in the plan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that 866,205 includes a contingency amount. I didn't break everything out for the sake of this being simply a new estimate, but there is some built-in contingency. And the other contingency, if you want to call it that, is in the total cost. I've included HST, and as council knows, we get a rebate of about 86% of the HST that we actually have to pay out to the contractor, and then the municipality gets that back.
I
So
understand that. What is the amount of the contingency in the 866?
I don't have that in front of me. I believe it's about 15%.
Okay, thank you. And my last comment is, and I'll let others speak. It really appears to me here, I want to thank McKellar for stepping up and giving us 60,000 when I thought it's only about 10 or 12% of the patients come from McKellar. I find it somewhat disturbing that I thought the figure, and again, I correct me if I'm wrong, something like 24% of the patients attending the facility come from Magnetawan, and they have an amount in there of $10,000 on $1 million building, and I find that disconcerting, I guess, as a counselor. And I don't know what can be done about that, but maybe publicly I'm not supposed to say that. 10,000 is better than nothing, but it falls far short of the participation of the people in Magnetawan. So with that, I'll finish. And again, good work by everyone on this, and hopefully we'll move forward and get a new nurses station. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Unless either Michelle or Marcella, you want to respond to that last comment about, we'll take questions from other councillors. Okay, anybody else? Oh, sorry, Michelle, I see you're muted, Michelle. Thank you.
Oh, no, I just muted because I didn't have anything further to add. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Lamb, for your comments.
Others?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councillor McEwen, just a comment, just to thank Michelle for her update. I know she's put a lot into the funding applications and such, and Marcella put a tremendous amount of work into organizing and setting up our campaign, fundraising, and project generally. And thanks to Councillor Lamb for all his questions. He pretty well covered the report in detail, which was great. So anyway, just thank you to everyone involved. Appreciate it.
Okay, anybody else? If not,
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Woods.
Oh yes, Councillor Woods, go ahead.
Just basically the same messaging that Councillor Lamb and Councillor McEwen were given there. I know everybody put a heck of a lot of hours into this, a lot of work, and to see this all come to fruition at the end, I think is going to be a fantastic thing. So it's going to be a great addition in our community. And I'd just like to thank everyone, all the staff members, everybody on the committees, or all the representatives from the hospital, all the work they put in. It's fantastic.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Beth, go ahead, please.
Don't really have
Councillor
anything
Matthews.
new yeah, I don't have much new to add. Everybody's covered it pretty well. I just wanted to thank everyone for getting this package together. And if we could, maybe put it on our social media and such so that people can have an opportunity to read it. Anyone that had questions or reservations about doing the expansion, I think they would fully support it if they could read this package and really understand what the project is about and the benefits that it will bring to us. So just thank you for creating that and providing it to the public and for ourselves as well.
Okay, thank you. Michelle can give us the details, but the package is on the website as I understand it. And I think it's going on Facebook too. Am I
Echo.
right about that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The FAQ is on our website, and we've done at least one announcement on Facebook directing people to that location. When we do a little bit of a rollout on the fundraising, and we've got a poster and some pictures and that kind of thing that's going to, you know, attract people's attention. Then you'll see that on Facebook and our website, and we're going to, we as in Marcella and her team, I should say, are going to ramp up the, you know, the fundraising efforts. And, you know, there's a little bit in our newsletter. So yes, you'll see more about the nursing station and some graphics actually that are, that the CEO of the library has developed on behalf of the municipality for this project. So there's lots of people involved. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just a final comment. I think we all should be thanking the anonymous donor of, if I'm not mistaken, $80,000. That's a significant contribution, and they're to be thanked, even though we don't know who they are. Man, what a tremendous opportunity to you know, match funds with others, and boy, that person or persons are to be greatly thanked on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Are you ready for the question then? If so, I will ask our clerk to call the roll for a recorded vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gore Matthews.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
A resounding yes.
Thank you. Councillor McEwen.
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
And Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
All right, thank you. That brings us to item 14, which is an item in regard to parking at Bulger Landing, which I can fill you in on. But first, there are a couple of motions associated with this. So I'll read them and ask for a mover and seconder. That the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone receives the Council briefing note dated July 5th, 2021, reparking at Bulger Landing. And that a land surveyor be retained to reestablish the physical boundaries of the municipally owned landing area and the adjacent shore road allowance. And that the municipality increase the private road grant available to the Magnetawan Pioneer Association to include the entire length of the trail from Clear Lake to Bulger Landing and the households served by the landing, and that the municipality support an application by the Magnetawan Pioneer Association for a Crown Land Use Permit covering the existing parking area within the Wawashka-Shneskoot Conservation Reserve. Can I get a mover and seconder for this one, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Gorham Matthews, seconded by
I'll move, Councillor McEwen.
thank you, Councillor McEwen. Okay, just you have a report in front of you that gives you perhaps more detail than you might have you might care to have, but basically this issue arose over a year ago now, and I guess it came to our attention because staff from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, who have responsibility for the what is referred to as the Wawashka-Shneskoot Conservation Reserve, and that reserve is immediately adjacent to the actual physical landing at Bulger. They started to object to the fact that folks were parking along the side of the road in the reserve, and in fact were parking trailers and vehicles in the reserve, and some people had actually cleared a bit of space by cutting some trees and removing some brush and various things to try to expand the area. That's the situation will be familiar to some of you who have been involved with the situation that we had at the Wawashkish landings. Keep in mind that this is a public landing, has been for as long as there's been a trail leading to it. So not only do you have cottagers, but you also have other people who are coming in to camp and hunt and fish and do various things. And the pressure on the landing space, the parking space, is primarily, of course, in the summer and on long weekends. Earlier today, I got some photos that were taken this past weekend. And if you compare those to the ones that are in the briefing note, where it shows that there are only a few cars parked, there are cars parked everywhere you could possibly get a car parked and up the roadway into the conservation reserve and that sort of thing. So anyway, we had arranged actually to go last year to meet with the MECP folks back there and see what we could come up with. That meeting took place a couple of Fridays ago, and I personally went back with our manager of public works, Dave Creaser, because he'd never been back there. And it's an interesting junket. I'm not suggesting you may all want to take it especially if you don't have a really rugged 4-wheel drive vehicle. But in any case, there was a very useful, productive discussion involving representatives of the Cottagers Association that represents the cottagers on those 4 lakes, and we talked about the possibility of expanding the parking area a bit, which they want to do, but of course we have to determine. It's actually it's municipal property. Some of you will remember that back in 2015, I guess, we swapped a piece of property with the Roberts, the municipality, a property that the municipality owned with property that they owned, because originally they actually owned the property that the landing was on. So those of you who might remember that bit of history. In any case, after some further research, after we got back, we came up with these suggestions as to how we could help, basically help the folks in that lake association to do some badly needed improvements. And of course, one of the main, well, I suppose the main vehicle in what is being proposed here is our private road grant procedure, and you'll see the details of that, of what I'm suggesting we do there, which I think we should have done and could have done all along, but in any case, that's where it's at. So without going any further, I'll open it up for discussion and questions.
Well, I guess if nobody's going to go, I'll go.
Councillor,
I waited to give people an opportunity, so they'll have to follow me. So, Mr. Mayor, if we need to improve the dock out there, I have on the surface no problem with that.
By the way, we're not improving. Sorry, we're not improving the dock. It's the parking.
The parking. I'm sorry, the parking. I misspoke. The parking. Sorry. If we want to improve the parking, I have no problem with going through a process to get to where they want to go. Okay. I have really, really major concerns using the road grant to do that. anyone who, and I haven't been down that road, but I've sure as heck heard enough ventures down that road of people going, you know, an hour and a half for 4 kilometers and this sort of thing. It's a very dangerous road where someone could be injured very easily. And I know there was a fatality back there. I don't know that it was on the road, but it's a very dangerous area. And my concern is that if we, first of all, I don't know that anyone back there has deeded access across these roads or this whatever road it is going back there, that they have any sort of deeded access to do it. They're just doing it because it's Crown land, okay? So in essence, it's not a private road. It's not really a road. You know, people are going back there, as you point out in your report, they used to go by train and that sort of thing, right? So for us to start giving monies to maintain that road based on a formula, I am scared skinny that if anything happens on that road, for all the hundreds of people that go back there on ATVs and all kinds of off-road vehicles, and they injure themselves, that they're going to draw a straight line to the deepest pocket, which is going to be, other than the province, the municipality. And I just think it's the wrong way to go about it. Secondly, the road grant was meant for people on a road. That's why all the people, the number of households, 54, aren't part of it. As I understand it, they go out and then they take a boat to go to their properties, their island properties. They're not on the road. I may be wrong there, but that's my understanding. So I think it's a very, very dangerous step for us to take to start funding 9.5 extra kilometers of road in there for something that the road grant really wasn't meant to, and I think was set up properly. So I would disagree with the mayor on that. So again, I don't want to, you know, all the people out in Bulger or whatever think, oh, Councillor Lamb doesn't want to get your money. It's not that at all. I think that the proper way to do this, it's July now, isn't to come in and say, oh, let's just add another $6,000 onto the road grant that we've had debates of even giving money in recent years to take us over the budget, right? And just do it in mid-year because we want to do that, right? To improve the dock area. Sometimes when people, or not the dock, the parking. Sometimes when that happens, sometimes the people out there, the 54, they put some monies in, we match it, we do whatever. I think there's a resolution to this that isn't on the table here tonight. I really honestly believe that. And I think the proper way to go about this is to properly find out what they might want to contribute, if anything, and that we enter into and put this up, you know, up for discussion and debate and inclusion in the 2022 budget, and not just throw it in July of this year. I think this is going about it wrong. I think I won't be supporting it as it is. I support getting a survey. I support that part of it, but I just don't think we should be using the road grant to support island properties. Okay. So those are my thoughts on it. I think, and I'm petrified as to the potential liability by us taking over not only a road, it's a dangerous road. I mean, if someone came to us and said, oh, would you guys go over in Waystone Lake and build some steps up to Dead Man's Drop, right? Would we do that? No,
Okay.
because we realize that the folly of that, the you know, that if somebody got hurt over there, we'd be in down the wrong route, right? So anyway, those are my thoughts.
All right.
Let's do it, but let's do it through a different manner. Thank you.
All right. Let me just refute some of the points that Councillor Lamb has made. First of all, they are already receiving a road grant, as the briefing note tells you. the only suggestion that, when I discussed with, when I investigated what they were receiving and discussed with staff, if the reaction of our treasurer was that, in fact, if they applied for the entire length of the road, they would be entitled to get it under the terms of the road grant, which if you read the protocol, it says that it's for properties. It isn't simply for properties that are located on the road, because there are only a couple of those that are actually on the road, but and they're right at the end, of course. But there are, it's for and users of the roads, it reads. So within the terms of reference of the grant, they would be entitled, if they applied for it, to get what is here. I'm providing this information to you in the spirit of full disclosure, so you understand what the implication is. I also did ask our treasurer, by the way, if she saw a problem with the amount of it, and she said, no, it's not going to cause the thing to go over budget. So, it's the second issue is the liability issue. The road is posted as use at your own risk. The people who have the deep pockets are Her Majesty, because she owns all of the property that the road, using the term loosely, is on. People do not have the ability to sue Her Majesty. They don't have the ability to sue us. If a road that leads to your cottage that you have a deeded right over belongs to somebody, yes, there could be litigation associated with that. But ironically, the Crown is immune to this, because they're basically saying you're on Crown land, you have the right to use it, but you can't sue the Crown if the Crown is not charging you to do it. So we're not at risk here in any way. The third thing I want to point out, make very clear, is that the Magnanawan Pioneer Association actually spends more on the road than any amount of money we would get from them. This is now, as the briefing note points out, this is essentially their only way to get to their properties, unless they have float planes or they wish to go in by canoe and kayak. And it is a dangerous road. No, I have no argument. And there have been some serious accidents, including fatalities, on it over the years. Our fire department is required to go back there. We deal with 911 calls, both for fire and for medical, in the area, and they have to go. They go back there. If you want, we can, our fire chief can give you a bit of an idea of some of the issues. You will know that we've had discussions in council previously about problems with the state of the road. But really, the only people who are putting any money into it at this point are the MPA, and they take a levy of their members of their association to pay for what is in there, and they get contractors in, out of Ardbeg to supply gravel, grade it, try to fill in the holes. The more traffic that the road is getting, the harder it is to maintain it, because people are using four-wheel drive vehicles that tend to chew up the road, as we've seen. So this is simply an opportunity for us to give the MPA some very modest assistance. I mean, if it doesn't matter to me if if there's some, if somehow the council feels that it offends the road grant protocol, then I would simply ask that we amend the motion to give them a grant of that amount of money towards maintenance, or we pay for the maintenance, or we do whatever. But I think it is better under the circumstances for us to let the association look after this and simply support them in doing it, as opposed to us, I can tell you, our manager of public works is not here, but on the call, but they do not want responsibility for maintaining any of those. And the MPA, by the way, has insurance, as they're required to by the agreement they have with us, under which they maintain the docks and so on. So they maintain insurance so that they're, in case somebody would falls off the dock or whatever and sues them. So I see this as no risk for us, and I see what we're contributing as a very minor amount. It seemed to me that since they were already getting the road, they were already receiving a road grant and have for a number of years. They just weren't applying for the whole of it. I guess because they thought that this portion in the middle, called, it's referred to on some maps as Hydro Road North, is was somehow or other they got the idea that they weren't entitled to apply for it. But they're still maintaining it. They're the ones who put gravel on it and have put a few culverts in to allow people to continue to use it. So anyway, I think this is the best and simplest way to help them out. But I'm open to other suggestions. Councillor McEwen.
What was the grant previous, the road grant?
It was $2,023.
So we're increasing it
And
by
it's-
4,000.
And it's based entirely on mileage. Well, sorry, not. I guess it was. Yeah, it was based entirely on mileage. There were no. Were assumed to be no users. And by the way, the users aren't all on islands. They're majority of them are on the shore of the lake, but the shore of the lake has no roads that go to it.
Now, I have no problem counting an island as a user, because you don't have to have a cottage or a house on your property to be included in the road grants. I'm aware of that one. As long as we're not setting some kind of precedent here where we're giving an extra bonus, if you will, which I guess we're not when you look at we're only using the total length of the road. So anyway, initially my thought was like Councillor Lamb, really, I thought it was maybe a exception here we're making within the the boundary of our road grant protocol, but I guess it fits after all. Thank you.
Other comments?
Mr. Mayor, could I go ahead, Councillor Woods?
You could, Councillor Woods, by all means.
Well, where do I start on this one? I mean, everybody knows about the issues that we've had out around Black Lake and what the cottage association members out there are dealing with boat thefts and trailer thefts, and then getting fines and tickets and whatnot. At some point, I mean, I thought this was some sort of like a committee. I was on it. I don't know how I got skipped off of that, but I mean, that's neither here nor there at this point. I would like to say, though, that I do go out there regularly. I was just out there yesterday, as a matter of fact, because I wanted to see what the state of Black Lake would be like. I went back a few times last year after people had some complaints. It's a treacherous feat to drive out there. I drove my little RAV4 out there yesterday. And if you are really not a good driver and you're really not comfortable with how to manipulate your vehicle, don't drive out there. I wouldn't suggest it, because you're going to get hurt or you're going to destroy your vehicle. I understand the reason why they're looking for a little bit of money, and Mr. Mayor, I understand why you're trying to get them said money. I don't think that the road grant would be the way to do it. As far as I knew, that's not how it was intended. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But I mean, the state of that road alone, once you pass Clear Lake, where we basically maintain it a bit, after that, you could throw easily $1 million at that road. I mean, $6,000 isn't going to help them at all out there. The biggest thing that we need to do to help that association out there is continue to put pressure on the OPP and the MNR to police out there. That's the problem. I got pictures from a friend of mine who went out there specifically to take pictures for me on a dirt bike on Friday. There was like 350 people at Black Lake. There was vendors selling stuff out there, and nothing in the form of policing whatsoever. I was extremely surprised and very happy yesterday after my trip that there was no garbage. Everybody actually cleaned up after themselves, which was fantastic, because when I was out there last year, it was a hellhole. It was disgusting the way people were acting out there. We need to really push that this area needs to be enforced. I mean, on the weekend, I stopped in and I talked to the guys at the dump, and I said, did we get anybody from Black Lake? Oh yeah, no, people were in here buying bag tags to get rid of their garbage. They said that they were out in Black Lake. I thought, okay, beautiful. So at least they're starting to get the message to keep the place a little bit cleaner and clearer. But there was an OPP officer sitting on Olds Road, pulling people over for helmets on their four-wheelers and whatnot. I mean, I see that as a wasted resource. We're paying the OPP to police. Good, send them out to Black Lake. Deal with the people that are acting ignorant out there and not respecting the property owners out there and their property that they leave there. And that's going to solve most of the problem. I don't know, does anybody actually have any legal right to call that a road or say it's a road to apply for the road grant, or have we been nice? Which, I mean, we should give them some money, but I don't know if this is going to open us up to future issues. You know, could someone else that has a spot where they use a launch point to get to their water access properties, could they all come back and apply under the road grants now to expand all of those areas?
Okay, I mean, I guess if we help them in some other tangible way, that is a possibility. There are lots of other, there are lots of other public landings, and some of them, I dare say, could use some work on them. But the primary emphasis of this grant is the support work that is actually to be done at the parking area on our property. Okay, and it's not, it isn't. I mean, you're quite right. It would bankrupt the municipality to try to fix the entire road, and I don't know any way. I don't know way around that. And by the way, the task force that is looking at the problems at Black Lake still exists, and you're still on it. We are trying to get a meeting together with OPP and MNRF enforcement. They have been talking about the problem, and our MPP's office has been pushing them. So it's not that nothing has happened, but there is a general shortage of resources. And they're provincial resources. We don't have the resources. I'm not coming in asking you to that we hire a couple of bylaw enforcement officers and put them out there, because that would cost us a fair bit of money. Anyway, as I say, the road grant, I fell on that simply because they're already getting it. Number one. Number two, it's an existing budget that we have. So we would have to, but if it is council's wish to help them in some other way, we can always go back and ask for, I mean, we can approve a next budget expenditure of a certain amount of money to get them going. But as I say, the principal purpose of all of this is to deal with the problem that is closest. You know, they do have some money and they do have some resources that they are putting into the road where they figure it needs it most. And I didn't think we really wanted to get into the middle of that. But what they need to do to expand the parking at the landing and avoid future conflict with the MECP is to expand the parking on our property. And of course, we have to know exactly what the boundaries of that are so they can figure out how much to expand it. So that's really what the money was intended to be used for. And I say, I'm certainly open to suggestions.
Yeah.
I feel we should help them, and we should do it now, not next year. They're going to apply for a road grant, and unless council amends the conditions of the road grant, our staff would approve their application because it meets the letter of the it does meet the letter of the protocol. I checked that.
Mr. Mayor?
Otherwise, I wouldn't be proposing it to you. So anyway.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
What can we do with this?
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
And again, debate, sometimes people disagree. I disagree with that interpretation, and respectfully, they do not live on the road, which is the key to any other grant. I don't know of any island property that we pay for, and you could say, well, we're paying for it already out there. But on these roads out there, I mean, there had to be some wisdom back when they were put on and the other part wasn't. And I mean, do these people have some sort of right of way out there, or some sort of there was something that occurred that this was done with some wisdom, not just happen chance. And I'm afraid that by extending it and tying it specifically to this, everyone's in agreement that we want to improve the parking on the area that we own. So why don't we just do that, right? And don't tie it to this, and then everybody's happy. But I don't think they should be getting a road grant when they don't live on the road. And people can tell me where else in this community people don't live on a road that we're giving out a road grant to. I don't believe that we are. And I just don't want to contaminate the thing any further by like, if you need to give them $6,000, give them $6,000. I'd rather it be to a plan, but I guess maybe it's rough enough they don't have a plan. I don't know. Give them 6,000. Come up with a bigger plan, and then next year give another 6,000 if you need to, but not in forever to improve our property. But just don't tie it to the road grant. That's all I'm saying. I think that's reasonable.
Okay, thank you. I'll let Councillor Gorham Matthews had her hand up, so I'll let her speak, and then I'll see if either our CAO or our treasurer have any comments about the road grant. Anyway, Councillor Gorham Matthews.
So my comment was mainly, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comment was mainly focused on a comparison to the work that we've done back at the Wawash-Cache landings in expanding the parking and availability there. And I think we could probably do the same up at Bulger as what we've done at Wawash-Cache and frame it in that reference as opposed to using the road grant protocol. But I do think they do deserve something towards the road until we can find a solution to all the problems that they've been dealing with. But in the meantime, can we frame it the same type of contribution that we've made towards Wawashkesh in creating a bigger parking lot and such, and do the same for this people up at Bulger?
Yes, we certainly could do that. And I think that the steps would be to, you'll notice that one part of the motion was that we get a survey, and I don't think, I'm hoping it doesn't cost as much as was suggested there, but because essentially it was surveyed at the time that we swapped ownership of the property with the Roberts. The problem is you can't see exactly where the markers, you know, you need a surveyor to actually come on site and locate the markers again and put some stakes in where the boundaries of the property are, so that if whoever is going to do the actual you know, the grading work and putting gravel on and so on, isn't transgressing on somebody else's property without their consent, or on the conservation reserve without a land use permit in place, because we've kind of got them, what has happened is we've got them to, in effect, turn a blind eye to the fact that part of the conservation reserve is being used for parking, which without consent. The idea of having the land use permit is to regularize that, and the Cottagers Association said they would apply for it because it doesn't really cost anything significant. It's just the process of going through getting one. But in the meantime, until that gets regularized, they're not going to have their vehicles tagged or towed away or any of that kind of thing. But you know, so I guess if the area were marked, then it would be possible to figure out how exactly or roughly what it's going to cost to expand it. So I mean, it could be done that way. Again, I was hoping that it could be done this year and not leave it until next year, just because you know, I'm not sure how much the problem is getting to be, if I showed you these pictures that I got today, you would see the problem is getting very much to this kind of state that the Wawashkesh landings were on long weekends a few years ago before we undertook this project. And it's not the same magnitude of project. I don't want you to get that idea for a minute, but it's I mean, I'm guessing that there could easily be you know, 10 grand worth of work. 10 grand doesn't go very far, because just the cost of getting the equipment in and the materials is prohibitive, as you heard from Councillor Woods talking earlier. Like this, you can't refer to this thing as a road. It's a very, very rough kind of a bush trail that's designed for all-terrain vehicles and not an ordinary car.
Well,
So-
Mr. Mayor, question? Comment on the question, if I
Yeah.
could. When I first read your under resource implications on page 78, 505 of your report, I guess, it looked like we were giving them an increase on the road grant for 2021. That was my first thought until you started explaining it. So that would be an increase of about $4,000 per year. So if we assisted them for a couple of years, because presumably the 6219 was going to satisfy them for this ensuing year, is that not correct? And so maybe we give them the $4,000 this year, and maybe look at a double $4,000, maybe 2 years running consecutive, or give them 8,000 up front and be done with it.
Well, you know, I wish I could be more specific about what the actual cost would be, but I guess the other thing I would say is that there was never the intention that in the discussions we had that we were just going to pay whatever it costs to do it. And I guess I misread the council perhaps, but I thought that would be less appealing to you than something that was
Yeah.
determined by a formula that would kind of say, well, okay, here's how much we're willing to contribute. But look, I don't want to prolong this endlessly. I think it's like I'm more than happy if we could get a motion that simply says we will give them. And if you're suggesting that they shouldn't be applying for a road grant, then I think we will have to come back and consider, you know, we'll have to consider the matter again in subsequent years and see what you know, what the need is and what can reasonably be accomplished. But if it's simply you want to make a motion that says here we don't, because they haven't applied for their 2021 road grant yet. They applied for the 2019 and 2021, 2019 and 2020, which is the amount that the $2,023, whatever it was. So, but it sounds like council is saying, well, we don't think you should apply for a road grant. We think we should just give you some money. So in that case, my suggestion would be that it should be sorry, I've got my screen's gone blank here that had the number on it, but
Well, Mr. Mayor,
$6,000 out of this year's budget. We could approve that and forget about the road grant for.
well, do we know how many of the 54 are actually on the road? Maybe there are only 4 people who can drive to their cottages. So maybe that's something we should be discussing a bit further before we make changes.
I don't think there's any on the road, are there?
That's what I'm wondering.
There's one or two, but everybody who has a property there uses the road. That's the only way they get there.
No, I realize that.
They all pay taxes.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, can I
Councillor
say
Woods.
something?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. From what I'm hearing, all of us want to give them the money to upgrade the parking area, or at least help them out in some fashion for the parking area. And Mr. Mayor, you said that we own the parking area, correct?
We do.
Okay, so we should be upgrading that. We should give them money, no matter what, to help them upgrade that area. Full stop, okay? I don't think we should attach it to the road grant. But what I'm hearing from everybody is we're all admitting that that area does need upgraded. They should need money, like most of our parking areas at any of our municipal launch points, right? So, I mean, that should be a no-brainer, no discussion. I mean, we're going to have to spend money on all of these launch points at some time for increased parking, access, whatever it is. And I don't think anyone's disputing that. So let's just give them the money that they're asking for that. If they have to come back next year, you know, I mean, I remember years ago, Wawash Kesh, I think it was asking for a few $1,000s to help upgrade their dock. Give them the money. It's a municipal access point. They're maintaining it. No problem. There's no argument there. Help them do it. But I don't think we should be attaching it to the road grant. That's it, period.
Okay, so could I, in the interest of moving this,
I'll give you a motion, Mr. Mayor, that we give to the I don't know who we give it to, the Pioneers Association, I guess, an amount of $4,000 to be used to upgrade the parking at whatever our launch area on Bulger Lake, and that council reviews the situation during the 2022 budget. And by that point, this, you don't have to write this, but by that point, they should be able to say, hey, we were able to do this with the 4,000. We also got another 200 or 1,500 from the people there. So it's done. or we need another 4,000 or whatever, and we'll split it with you or whatever, but there's can be some negotiation between now and next year as to what it takes to complete it. But we, plus you obviously you got to shut down the road grant. The road grant wasn't made to go across bush trails. It was made to go on roads, right? So, so no, they can't get this $4,000 and then apply for a road grant and us grant it. So we got to shut that down, right? And so just give them the $4,000. I don't think anyone on council is debating that. Like, just give them $4,000 towards upgrading the parking lot, and we'll review it next year again.
Oh, okay, but you're still, what you're then doing is you're really only giving them $2,000 because you're shortchanging them what they've been getting historically to maintain the road.
No.
Yes,
I'm
you
not
are.
I'm not suggesting you take the 2,100 away.
Well, you just said they shouldn't be applying for a road grant. What's the,
On the 9.7 kilometers and the 54 houses. The 54 houses are on the lake. Like, they keep getting their 2,100, plus we're giving them 4,000, which is a little more than they would get through the road grant because it's actually 3,700. Give them $4,000, let them improve the parking lot, and let them carry on with the road grant the way it is, not improved or with 54 people or anything else. They can't do that. Why are we making this more difficult?
well, because your argument was all predicated on the fact that it's a misuse of the road grant. And if you think it's a misuse of the road grant, then I don't understand why they get it. There's no more people on the road that they do get the road grant for today just has a chunk out of the middle of it. They're getting paid that $22,023 to put towards the portion of the road that goes from Clear Lake, the end of the Clear Lake Road where we stopped maintaining it, to Black Lake. And then they're getting paid for the little piece that goes east-west or north-south at the top that's called Semicoka Trail, which is actually within the conservation reserve, a good chunk of it. And they're not getting paid for the chunk in the middle, which goes up the hydro right away. So if the argument, I'm sorry, but if the argument that you're making is that it's an improper use of the road grant, then I don't know why you think some of it's okay, but some of it isn't. That's
Well, I don't know that we have all the information on why they're getting it on the two chunks now, but I thought that they were not getting the road grant, and staff can perhaps, they're not getting the road grant on the 9.7 kilometers.
they're getting
of-
the road grant on 6 kilometers of it. Of the 9.
They're getting, I thought they were on 6, but not not the 9.7, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
okay, so
maybe I let me make it simple. I don't want to take their $2,000 away from them. I want us to take a look at that, but I don't want them applying for more monies this year and us granting them. I just simply want to give them, and I think council want to give them $4,000 towards improving the dock. Leave the road grant the way it is. Let's not get into a great big argument about, we're just,
all right, so
I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't care.
well, never. Look, it seems that council thinks that we should just give them some money. So I'm okay with that. I'm not going to argue with that. I just thought, based on your argument, that you were saying, oh no, they should have a road grant. That's
Mr. Mayor, that would be
yeah, Councillor Land, that is pretty much what you said. I mean, I'm trying to take your word at face value here.
An additional road grant.
Oh, okay, well, all right. Anyway, we're not getting.
Mr. Mayor, have we committed to changing the road grant for these people? Do I detect that? And
No,
secondly,
no, absolutely not.
secondly, there are a lot of islanders who benefit from us fixing up a parking area at Wawashkesh and at Gooseneck and a few different places. So I see no problem with giving them some money toward fixing that up
Yeah.
and leave the road grant
Yeah.
alone.
Well, I've heard several, I think all of everybody except me thinks that's the best way to do it. So I rest my case here. Let's get a wording that'll get us what we want. So there were three that's okay. There were three parts to this motion. The first one was that a land surveyor be retained to establish the physical boundaries of the municipal only. So I didn't hear any objection to that. The second one is it says increase the private road grant. So what we need to replace that one so that it says, and that, let me try this. Okay, and that the municipality
Pay the road grant.
I'll just say pay a sum of what, let me see what the amount was. I'm trying to find what the difference is here. Sorry, it was 4,000 something, I guess, right?
No, I've got the information here. It's 30, what are you looking for? I know what we paid them this year because I asked the treasurer this afternoon. For the 7 kilometers that she says is Wagon Trail and Semacoca Trail East and West, we paid $2,431.10 this year. And the recommendation would have been to increase this to 9.7 kilometers and include the 54 houses, and that would have taken it up to 62,1947. So the difference would have been an increase of $3,788. So we're just rounding it off to 4,000.
All right, the sum of $4,000. That's fine. The municipality pays a sum of $4,000 towards. I better say to the MPA towards the cost of expanding the parking area at Bulger Landing. Does that make sense to you? Is that what you want?
Perfect.
Okay. So that replaces that second clause, and the third one is that we support an application by the Magnottawan Pioneer Association for a Crown Land Use permit covering the existing parking area within the conservation reserve, which simply means that, they're going to make the application, and if they ask us, we'll say, yeah, we're okay with that, which I'm not sure it matters a whole lot because the suggestion was that they be the applicant and not us. So anyway, would you like me to reread the whole thing again as I have it?
Yes, please.
Would that help?
Yeah.
That the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone receives the council briefing note dated July 5th, 2021, re-parking at Bulger Landing, and that a land surveyor be retained to reestablish the physical boundaries of the municipally owned landing area and the adjacent shore road allowance. And that the municipality pay a sum of $4,000 to the MPA towards the cost of expanding the parking area at Bulger Landing. And finally, that the municipality support an application by the MPA for a Crown Land Use permit covering the existing parking area within the Wawashkesh-Niskut Conservation Reserve. Are the mover and seconder, Councillor Gorham Matthews and Councillor McEwen, are you okay with this motion as I read it?
Yes, I'm okay. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. I will ask if there's nothing further, I will ask the clerk to call the roll for the vote, please.
Thank you. Councillor Gore Matthews.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb,
Yes,
Councillor McEwen,
Yes.
Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Comrie.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Now that brings us to 14.2, which is COVID-19 and related matters. And I'm just looking at, trying to see if I have any. The intent of this was to have some discussion about about reopening, possible reopening. I guess we'll follow the proper procedure and try and get a motion on the floor, and then we can talk about it a bit. The motion that's suggested is as follows. Whereas Council Resolution 2020-087 dated April 5th, 2020 stated that a number of amenities and buildings will be closed to the public due to COVID-19. And whereas within the recent lifting of provincial restrictions, the public washrooms, playground, beach, ball diamonds, and water tap are now open to the public. And whereas the Dunchurch Community Center and Pavilion remain closed to public events and activities. And whereas there has been a request to utilize the Dunchurch Community Center for food preparation for a wedding event, now therefore be it resolved that the Dunchurch Community Center and the Pavilion reopen to allow for public events subject to all provincial regulations being adhered to, specifically in respect of capacity limits for designated events. And that the municipal office, fire hall, and public works garage remain closed to public access until further notice. Would someone like to move that?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor Gore Matthews, seconded by
I'll second, Councillor McEwen.
Councillor McEwen. All right, thank you. It's open for discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councillor Gore Matthews.
Yeah, I think as long as we're following the provincial guidelines with regards to the number of people allowed inside or outside at events, we should start looking at allowing some things to start happening again. I know I've heard from different people that really benefited from the walk fit that have really lost a lot of their mobility and such. So anytime that we can start getting, 5 people, 7 people, however many are allowed in with certain regulations and things, we should start inviting people back to using the facilities and reconnecting with one another under the guidelines of the province, obviously.
Okay, thank you. Other comments?
yes. I don't have a problem with this. I would hope we're moving towards having our council meetings somewhat open to the public, even if it's limited numbers. I think a lot will happen once we move to stage 3, which I think will be, towards the latter part of, or 3rd or 4th week of July. And I don't know what the numbers will be at that point, but yeah, I'm okay with this. I think it's a fluid situation. I think the municipal office, the fire hall, and public works garage, we can take a look at in 2 or 3 weeks. And once we go into stage 3 and see what we can do there or not. So I'm comfortable enough with this. I guess my only question would be, what sort of cleaning is occurring? And again, if people are going to be in we're going to open up the community hall. Shouldn't we be doing some sort of special cleaning? It's a question more than anything. And if so, I don't think we should be responsible all the time for that special cleaning. I know, for instance, in our condominium, which is a lot different than a municipality, people can now use our social room, but we've instituted a special cleaning, right? Because we have to kind of, not deep clean it, but we have to do a substantial cleaning in order to make it fit for the next person going in. So other than cleaning in the community hall, I mean, I don't know, maybe someone can allay my concern there, but other than that, I'm okay with this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will invite the CAO to comment on what we're currently doing. As you'll notice, we have in fact opened up the public washrooms, and we do have a cleaning protocol for the community center if it is used for the odd time when it's used for an internal meeting or that sort of thing. So, Michelle, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, our public washrooms are attended to twice a day, and the folks that clean them, I wouldn't say that they clean it more than they would under normal circumstances, but they're certainly attentive to the fact that it's a germ zone, and they're careful to make sure that each cleaning is done carefully. In terms of the community center, the very first event is really just to help out the folks that were planning a wedding. They are having the wedding at their property now, and the only thing they're using the community center for is for the caterers to cook the meal. So they understand it's not more than 5 people. They'll be wearing masks where they possibly can, and it's restricted to the kitchen. They're expected to clean the kitchen thoroughly, as you would normally have to do when you use the kitchen. And then our staff will go in afterwards and do another bit of a cleaning to make sure everything got attended to, the dishwasher and the sinks and that kind of thing. And of course, you can only have 5 people now. And if someone wanted the community center for a public meeting, it's not likely it would happen, because 5 people isn't very many. Once we get into stage 3, we'll be looking at more folks that may want the community center. And as Councillor Gordon Matthew said, at some point, WalkFit will want to reconvene in September. And in the meantime, just to make sure that the wedding folks can have the community center to cook their meal, I want to get this resolution on council, and I'm working with the public works manager on a sort of a more robust checklist on what we would need to do once we open up the community center. So that we've given some thought to that, and it's wiping every table instead of just some of them, wiping down chairs and all those things that we want to make sure are done so people feel comfortable in the community center. So hopefully that helps. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other comments about the motion on the floor? Anybody else? Are you ready for the question then? If so, is anybody opposed to the motion as I read it? Sounds like not, so that motion is carried, and we will be revisiting the subject of, when we might get back to face-to-face meetings and that kind of thing, I'm sure at another meeting. I noticed a couple of pages that didn't print very well. Is there anything, I'll ask our clerk, is there anything else under item 14 that I'm missing, or are we ready for 15 for correspondence?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, there were only 2 items for
Okay.
14,
All right.
and you have those.
My printer spewed out a couple blank pages, so I wasn't sure. Okay, fine. We'll go move to correspondence, and I'll get a mover and seconder for this. whereas the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone has received the correspondence items listed on page 5 of the July 5th, 2021 council agenda. Now therefore be it resolved that council received the correspondence items for information with the following extracted for further information. Can I get a mover and seconder, and then we'll go down the list and see if we want to extract any.
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb, seconded by,
I'll second Councillor Woods.
okay. So I will then ask you, are there any particular ones that you would like to pull for discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
could we discuss T, please?
We can if you would like, certainly. What
That was the one from McDougal regarding the new school.
I thought that well, anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, so T, McDougal School, anything else?
Mayor, I might just mention, I just have a comment on N, please.
N is the OPP detachments? Sorry, I don't,
The OPP Detachment Board.
that's what I thought it was. Yeah, I'm just, well, anyway, I was trying to get my list back up in front of me here. Okay, we just put OPP detachment board. Anything else? Well, okay, I guess what we'll do is we'll go in alphabetical order and we'll start with item N, the OPP detachment board. Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, there's Q&A, which is S, I believe, supplement OPP Detachment Board. It addresses several questions that have been asked of why, what, and when, and how, and who, and all that kind of stuff. So I'll leave that with councilors to review. I know it's a multi-page document, and there's lots of information in that. And I guess secondly, just to inform council that we're still in the process of waiting for the Solicitor General's office to get back with the actual formation of the detachment boards and who will comprise of what. And there is a letter from I believe the Archipelago, who was supportive of our local CPAC's presentation to Solicitor General's office, which is in essence, we were pretty much in agreement that, and hopefully with municipalities' agreement as well, it appeared to be so, that we follow a similar pattern, especially of the representation from municipalities and public and First Nations locally within the West Prairie Sound Detachment Board. I know we're in a way fortunate that we only have one detachment board covering the whole of West Prairie Sound. So many locations have multiple boards and boundaries cross over with counties and towns and all kinds of situations out there. So we're not sure 100% how it's going to come down, or even 50% maybe. But there's still a lot of unanswered questions, and there's a lot of logistics required to set up the new Police Service Board. So it's a work in progress. So other than that, there's a fair bit of reading material in correspondence for councilors to look at if they wish to get a little more up to date on it. So that's all I had to say, just to brief you a little bit on the change from the old CPAC group that I've been involved with to the formation of the new Police's OPP Detachment Service Boards. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McEwen. Any discussion about that? It's still my understanding that at some point in time we will be asked to approve something, but I'm not sure that what that is at this point or when that might happen.
Yeah.
if there's nothing further about that, we could move to the McDougall resolution, re the super school. Councillor Gordon Matthews.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did have the new school under councillor items, but then I saw the letter from McDougall Council, and I just wanted to bring up that a few weeks ago, the Near North District School Board did a presentation on the new mega school, and they had the architects and whatnot there to show you what they had planned. And there's some concerning things if you're a parent from Whitestone that students are going to be going to Parry Sound High School. This new school that they're proposing to build, currently Parry Sound High School, McDougall and Nobel have a combined population of 1,100 students, and the school they're planning to build will only accommodate 800 and some students. So from the get-go, they're building a school that they know is going to be not a little bit too small, but a lot too small. And they're planning on having all these pods located all over the school grounds, which are basically fancy words for portables, except they're in a nice, pretty hexagon shape, and they look nice on the architecture drawing. But basically, you're going to be sending our high school students to a school that there aren't enough classrooms for all the classes that are currently being taught at the high school. And I think that any parent that within the municipality of Whitestone should be going on the Near North District School Board website and looking at the plans that there are on there. And there's an opportunity to make comment as well to the plans, and let the school board know that you'd like this reviewed. And I know it's a money issue. You know, they've had this money for 5 years and it hasn't been used, so they can only build so much with what they've got now. So I just encourage all parents to voice their opinions before their kids are going to high school and classes get cut or whatnot. They lose out on some of the great programs that they already have. So that's my concern. I would think it would concern other parents of students that are in the high school as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gordon Matthews. We could get the representative of the board to come and talk to, well, the vice chair is a Whitestone ratepayer. We could get him to come and explain the situation. I don't know if that would help or not. But in any case, if that's the wish of council, you can think about that if you want.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Councillor
Yeah, just to follow up on what Councillor Gordon Matthews says. This has always been a bugaboo in my mind, and it's just not up here. It's in big cities and small cities and all kinds of things, right? And you go to schools that are built and there's portables there, right? Or if there isn't portables, there's portables there within a year or two, and then they even put extensions on schools, and then once they finish the extensions, there's still portables there. So I don't understand it. I don't have kids in school. I got grandkids in school, but so I don't want to weigh into something I don't know a lot about, but it does seem that if you've got 1,100 students and if you project into the future that you're going to have 1,100 or more, then you should be building for 1,100, right? Not for 800 plus portables. But again, they have budgetary constraints as we do, and Councillor McEwen may have something to say about this. He was on the school board for years. But anyway, I leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, I do have one comment on that, and that is that I attended a couple of the ARC, the Accommodation Review Committee meetings back, and gosh, I guess that's 5 years ago now, maybe longer. And at that time, the projection of students in our area was like 600, so they were building for 800.
Yeah.
Things have changed drastically in the last couple of years with people moving into the area. There's been a lot of change. maybe we should ask the school board or the ARC committee to give us an update on the population, school population versus the space in the school or some such thing. I don't know how accurate that is or where the number came from. I had never heard that there were more than 800 students going to the super school, but maybe Beth can say or mention where she got the number from, the elevated number from. Beth, did that come from the meeting, from the board?
Yeah, it was in the meeting. They announced that number in the meeting.
They being the audience or the school board?
The school board. The school board.
So they said they're building for 800 and they are building for 800 with 1,100 students. Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Hmm.
So they're planning on 6 pods at this time. So they'll have 6 portables to start with.
Oh, really?
And they may need more, depending on how many there are. Yeah, Carling in particular has had a huge surge in families the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Nobel School has really rebounded in their numbers.
Okay. Thanks, that's interesting. Shush.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm not saying that we need to have them come to a meeting or anything. What's done is done. I'm just saying that parents should pay attention to this and look at these numbers and voice their concerns.
okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, can we approve this motion to receive these items, and any objection to doing that? Okay, thank you. Councillor items.
I have a
Mr. Ma-
couple, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry.
Well, all right, Councillor Woods, you can go first this time.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I had a call from, sorry, I had a call from a ratepayer today. And he asked me a pretty interesting question and one I couldn't give him an answer for. And the question was, Brian, why is it when I go on the municipal website, I can't find anywhere that will tell you where there are access points to the lakes? And I said, I'm not sure. Good question. I'll call and I'll find out. So I spoke to our planning assistant today and mentioned it to her. And I kind of agree. I mean, there's other municipalities in the area, I think Perry Sound and McDougall are 2 of them, that they list on their websites any municipal launch points to get onto the lakes. And I think that would be something that we should look into doing. I think it would be appreciated by a lot of people in the area. That was the one. And the other one, we were talking earlier about reopening, and the bathrooms are open now down at the beach, and I really appreciate it. I bring my kids there quite often. But I would like to say though, the bathrooms were absolutely meticulous when I went in there the other day, and the beach looked fantastic. So I'd like to thank staff for a job well done maintaining the beach and the playground area. It looks fantastic now. And that's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you very much for those. I'm sure, well, your first suggestion, I think, is a good one. We do actually have a list of all the municipal access points that we put together back in, I don't know, March of last year, I guess, when we were talking about the possibility of whether they could be closed or should be closed or whatever. There's more of them than I thought of at first blush. So we could put that on I guess we could put it on the website. And I'm sure staff will appreciate hearing your comments about the beach and the washrooms. Any other councillor items?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and just save me a telephone call tomorrow. I just thought as we were going into the meeting, and I came down Canning today, and I missed a meeting a month or so ago, so I may have missed this. Have we taken out the contract for municipal grass cutting? And if so, do we know when that is going to be done? And if we haven't, why haven't we? So I'm sure we probably put it out to tender, haven't we? If we need to do that, or can someone help me with it? Thank you.
Madam CAO?
Yes, there has been a request for quotation for grass cutting. It doesn't typically come to council because it's under the threshold. It has been awarded to, I'd have to double check. I don't want to say an open session unless I've got the right name. And I suspect it's about to start in the next week or so. So what I'll do is I will get the information from our public works manager and correct anything that I've said that may be incorrect, but I think I'm on the right track, and I'll let you know. It is getting that time of year where it's time to cut the grass. I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other councillor items?
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, please. Councillor Gorman Matthews.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was back at the Indian Narrows on the weekend on Friday, and it looks really good. I know we got a update from staff that all the work was completed back there this weekend. The getting onto the dock is fully accessible now. There's no step to get up onto it. There's 2 picnic tables there so that people can enjoy the area. It just looks really clean and tidy and very nice. Now, there still isn't enough parking. The people are still parked the way up the road to Gulls Road along the side of the road, but it was very nice looking. So I just wanted to thank staff for all the work they put in back there, because it really looks good.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, one comment.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I visited a friend at the end of Shawanaga Road, which I was dreading, thinking of what the road would be like, and was last time I was in there. But staff have been doing a major upgrade on that road this year. It's been on their list, I guess. They've taken out a lot of boulders and put in a lot of gravel and done some ditching, and just a phenomenal job with the grader. So I scooted in there on smooth roads. I was very, very pleased. And my friend was over the top pleased that they're working on that road this year. So hopefully it's a long-term fix for a cadge road. It's been a long time old road. It was a cadge road that went through to Bulger from Shawanaga from 124, and just an old colonization road, which is gradually getting fixed up. So it was appreciated that there's been work done on it this year.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McEwen. Anything else? Okay, questions from the public. Have any questions from the public? See, we still have a few left on the call. So not hearing any.
You have one from Doug Hickey. My hand's up.
Oh, okay. I see it now. Doug, go ahead, please.
I gotta put on my video. The subject is item 8 that was on the agenda here regarding commercial industrial zoning. Showing a large circle and in the wrong location. That was absolutely a terrible idea. Terrible. It not only it alarmed ratepayers when they saw that, it caused unnecessary and needless concern by the gentleman who's thinking of putting in a manufacturing facility. And as he spoke, you could tell he was feeling pushback when he saw all this. And again, the simple circle caused a lot of that problem. So I fully agree with council with your idea to support him with his with the idea of bringing in manufacturing. It's going to attract business. It's going to grow the tax base. It's going to provide jobs. A lot of the things that we heard the Perry Sound Pool was going to do, but now we've got something in Whitestone We need to just climb on this and support the daylights out of it. So I agree with where council ended up. The other thing, and I think it was Councillor McEwen that brought this up, the idea of an industrial park, good idea, but it shouldn't be driven by this gentleman's manufacturing location in Lorimer Lake Road. It should be driven by what's best for Whitestone. It might be in Lorimer Lake Road, but it could be somewhere else. We need to keep that independent because we may decide that there's a better place in Whitestone for an industrial park. But to combine the two and clutter them up, I'm afraid that we cause some concern with this guy. I think we need to patch some fences here with him because we need him. We need his manufacturing. So I just thought I'd pass that comment on.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. We will then move on to our confirming bylaw. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move it, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. Seconded by.
I'll second Councillor Woods.
All right, thank you. Any objection to approving this motion? All right. And finally, motion to adjourn.
I'll move, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods, seconded by
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Gorham Matthews. Whereas
I'll
the
second.
business, thank you, Councillor Gorham Matthews. Whereas the business of this meeting is concluded, now therefore be it resolved as this meeting be adjourned at 9:41 p.m. Until the next scheduled meeting, Monday, July 19th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. or at the call of the chair. And all those in favor, please hang up and have a good evening. Thank you for
Good
joining
evening.
us.
Have a great evening,
Good night,
folks.
folks.
Night.
Good night.